Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Vinyl Den, your channel for record collecting by record collectors. I'm Nick. Today I'm checking out this new album from the story so far, I Wanted a Spear. There's a bunch of links down below. You got links for the Vinyl Den Facebook group, for the merch page, for the Spotify and Apple Music playlist that I put together every week, and the Patreon page. So make sure you check all that out. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button down below, and make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified every time I release new episodes. So the story so far is one of those bands that I've had on my radar for a long time. I mean, their debut album came out back in 2011. You know, I think I've listened to basically just some singles or some hits over the years, and for some reason, one reason or another, I never really dug into anything else from the band. And then last summer, the band released the first single off the new album, Big Blind. And I guess the band was contractually obligated to release new music before they went on tour with Blink-182. So they started working on this new album. And I think so Big Blind was released last August, I believe. And then earlier this year, they released the second single, Letterman, off this album. So after they released the first single, that's when I started getting into the band and started listening to some of their older stuff. Listen to the singles that they'd released off of the new album. And, I'd really liked what I heard. Even though I hadn't listened to a full album, I kind of went through Apple Music and kind of listened to like I think it was like their 10 most played songs is what I kind of went through, kind of in the lead up to this album release. So I Wanted to Spear is their fifth studio album. It was released on June 21st. This album was produced and mixed by John Markson, which the first four albums for the band were all done with Sam Pura. So I don't know why there was a split with him, if the band just decided to go in a different route, or if there was some kind of, I guess, some disagreement between him and the band. But they decided to go and use a different producer on this new album. The production work on this album is flawless. This is a great sounding album. The album was mastered by Ted Jansen at Sterling Sound in New York. So as far as like the mixing, the mastering, the production work, you really can't get better than what you're listening to on this album. I will say that I wasn't really sure who John Markson was. I know he's produced a lot of stuff over the last few years, but kind of going down through his discography, I don't think I've ever listened to any of the stuff he's done. So this is kind of the first time I'm hearing his work on this album, and I have to say I'm really impressed. So like I said, their first album was released in 2011, and over the four studio albums that came out before this one, there's been a big evolution in the band's sound. Their first couple of albums were very much like straightforward 2010s pop punk stuff. Really good stuff. I love their first couple of albums, and by the time they got to Proper Dose, which was their fourth album released in 2018, they kind of moved away from that. And they started incorporating a lot more like indie rock and acoustic sounds into their music. So the one thing I noticed right away that I really liked about this new album is it still has that same kind of sound that they had on Proper Dose. But it also pulls back to their earlier sound also. They put, a couple of these songs sound like they could have been off of one of their first couple of albums. That's kind of cool how they're bridging kind of both sounds with this album. So I know the band has gone through a lot since Proper Dose was released in 2018. I know the band's bass player left. The band actually almost broke up. They decided to kind of hold it all together, release some new music, put it together, and release a new album so they could go on tour with Blink-182. I know the lead singer, he lost his dad, and a lot of that like grief and it kind of comes through a lot of the lyrics on this new album. There's definitely some darker tones on this new album that the band really hasn't had on previous albums. So with some of the mixed reviews that Proper Dose got, I think it was really important for the band to start out strong on this new album. And that's exactly what they did. The first two tracks on here are All This Time and Watch You Go. And I think those are two of the stronger tracks on the album. And it kind of sets the pace for the entire album. So I really like the way they pace this album. Of course, it has a lot of the high energy stuff that you expect from this band, but they also kind of mixed in a couple of softer acoustic tracks towards the end of the album. Kind of sets a contrast to some of the other stuff on here. That's the one big issue I have with a lot of newer punk albums is a lot of them have that same kind of sound across the entire album, and they do a really good job kind of mixing that up on this one. That's the one thing I've noticed over the last week or so since I've been going through their older albums, is the band doesn't do a lot of slower songs. So them mixing in two on this album, I think, like I said, was a way to kind of break up the sound on there. Like I said also before, this album has a lot to do with like grief and some darker themes throughout life, and kind of mixing in those tracks I think is a great way to contrast all that on this album. So it kind of brings me to some of my favorite tracks on this album. Like I said, this album starts out great with All This Time and Watch You Go. Jump the Gun is another track. You're Still in My Way is another great track. I Want to Disappear, which is the title track, I think is a great way to end this album. And I know I've watched a couple of reviews, and they weren't a big fan of that song, but I think a lot of them kind of miss the meaning of that song and how it ties in to the rest of the album and everything that the lead singer has gone through over the last couple of years. So kind of knowing the backstory, I think, really helps to understand that song. And going across this album, I think there's really only one skippable track on here, and that's Letterman, which was the second single that the band released off this album. I'm not a fan of it. I don't know. I mean, it's not a horrible song. It's just one that, when I'm listening to it on vinyl, I've got no problem. I'll just listen straight through it. But if I'm listening to this, if I'm streaming the album, honestly, I'll probably skip over that track. I don't know. It just kind of, it doesn't flow, I think, the way the rest of the album does. So overall, I think they did a great job blending that older sound, the older pop punk sound from the band, and kind of mixing in with that more mature sound that the band had on Proper Dose. And I'm hoping that the band kind of sticks with that kind of method going forward. There's really not a lot I can knock on this album. I think that one big thing I noticed kind of right away was some of the songs kind of drone on a little too long. It's a pretty tight album. There's 10 tracks. It's like 30 minutes long. But there's a couple of tracks where there's 20, 25 seconds of a fade out. I think they could have cut that back, made it a little more of a tighter album. So that's one thing I can knock it on. And the song placement, I don't think is that great. I think had Letterman been in a different spot on the album, I think it might have worked a little bit better. And having those acoustic, softer tracks end the album, like I said, I like the way the title track ends the album. I think the other track, they could have moved up earlier in the album, maybe kind of broke up the sound a little bit differently across this album. Overall, I think it's a really enjoyable album. I've listened to it a bunch of times since it was released. I'd give it probably a 7.5 out of 10. It's an album that I'm sure will end up in my top 20 or top 25 at the end of the year. So as for the physical version of this album, I only have it on vinyl. I don't have it on CD yet. They did a great job with it. I will say, if you want to grab a copy of this, I'll put a link down in the show notes. It's going to run you like $25 on Amazon, which I think is a good price. It comes in a nice gatefold jacket. So you get on the front cover here, it says the story so far. It's embossed across the top. It's really kind of hard to see, I'm sure, on the camera, but it's a nice added touch to it. And on the back side, it has all the track listing on here. Same thing. It's all embossed. Like I said, maybe I can try to get the glare from the light on there. Yeah, it's going to be really hard to see. But like I said, really nice presentation with the jacket. It is on a gatefold. Pretty simple. It's got the little I Want to Disappear thing in the middle there. And then it does say Disappear embossed inside the jacket here also. And then there is an insert that comes along with this, which is kind of it's a little different than what a lot of other bands do, where they do just like a printed lyric sheet. This is actually a big fold-out poster. So you got the logo on the front side here. And it does say it's glossy across the front, the story so far. And then when you flip this thing over, it's got all the lyrics and liner notes on it. So I know there were several different variants of this album that got released. I know there was a Hot Topic version. There was I think there was a Target version. There's an indie exclusive. There's a couple of different exclusive versions to their website. So I decided to go with just the standard version of this. This is a milky clear with, what is this, black, orange, and like a greenish blue splatter. I just love the look of this album. And then there was a different version of this that I got that I pre-ordered. I was hoping I'd have it in time to do this video. I think they said it was going to be like a 2 or 3 week delay before it got sent out. But it's a really cool deluxe version of this. It comes in a nice bound book. And it's got Black Smoke. I'll put a picture of the album up here. And I'm just waiting to get a copy of that, and maybe I'll do another video once I get that one. Well, that's all I got for you today, guys. Thanks for checking the show out. Make sure you drop me a comment down below. I'd love to know what you guys think. Have you listened to this album yet? Are you planning to grab a copy of it? Are you going to grab a copy on CD, which is a lot cheaper? I think you can grab a copy of it on CD for $12 or $14. Like I said, you're not going to break the bank grabbing a copy of this on vinyl. I think it's $25 or $26 on Amazon. But I've listened to a bunch so far, and I've really gotten into this band since this album came out. I actually ended up ordering a whole package that their label offered because I didn't have any of their albums on vinyl, and I got all 5 of the albums with their first 4 and then the new album when it got released. So it's kind of cool to get all those. I've been digging through those over the last week or so. But let me know what you guys think. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button down below. That's all I got. Until next time, keep on spinning. Peace.